I mentioned this game in passing in the past as I didn't have a full-length review for 20XX. However, this early access game is too good for me to not bring up. So since I've run out of Mega Man X games to talk about, there's no better time than to really bite into this beautiful, wonderful indie game experience. And special thanks to Cog for taking time out of his busy schedule to play the game's frenetic co-op mode alongside me. So won't you join us then for a closer look at 30XX? Greetings everyone, this is the Hipster Snack, and today we're going to be looking at a bit of Indie X I cannot put down since I started playing. The follow-up to the previous title, 20XX. Today, we'll be looking at Battery Staples, 30XX. And figuring out the lore of these games has been no easy task, but as I've parsed it, the two heroes, Nina, clad in blue, and Ace, her friend in red, are reawakened 1,000 years after the events of the past game. I am uncertain if they're robots or cyborgs or something else entirely. Barring that, we only have what the game's Steam page tells us, which I shall now impart for you here. Quote, awaken 1,000 years after 20XX to realize the world that needed you is gone, changed irreversibly by the advent of the synthetic mind and a human race that's lost the will to reach for the stars. Explore the lush, verdant prison our world has become, and fight to save what remains. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it's an excuse sufficient to launch headlong into this world of robotic bedevilment and try to set the human race to rights by blowing up everything in sight. So, let's start the breakdown. And the game just looks amazing. It's very clear that the PlayStation era of Mega Man X titles has strongly influenced the overall art direction and level design as a whole. Here's something that might not exactly shock you. I rather like those games, so this works out well for me. It's a bit more rooted in high-def pixel art, which seems to give everything a bit more texture, as opposed to the smoother but flatter designs found in the previous title. If I had to guess, I would say the Mega Man Zero and ZX titles helped inspire the shape of the graphical detail, but again, that's idle speculation. Might simply be that pixels were easier to realize for the character designs than the methods used before. What the heck do I know? What I do know, however, is that for sure, I totally dig the new look. Characters are a bit smaller and the camera's more zoomed out, so I can better anticipate what's coming my way as I progress. It just makes the game quite a bit less, leap of faith-ish in its overall design, which is a huge relief as the last legs of 20XX gave me PTSD flashbacks to Mega Man 7's Wily stages. If you played them, you know what I'm talking about. And lastly, it's a bit of a relief to see that the yellow highlights are largely toned down for this game on the two main characters and their armor. And speaking as someone who is predominantly yellow, it is a color that can become quite overpowering. So seeing Nina and Ace's new designs emphasize their base primary colors was a welcome change. And music-wise, it takes inspiration from the X series by having a strong emphasis on guitar work and a heavy rock techno kind of motif throughout, fitting for the robot-inspired theme and setting. I'll be honest, when I sat down to write this moment, I kinda had a blank, wide-eyed look on my face. I'm so used to moving a mile a minute and blasting everything to bits that I had a hard time even remembering what the music was. But listening to the music outside the game and being able to appreciate its technical nuance, I really do appreciate how rich the soundtrack truly is. All the while it embraces the limitations of a simpler time in order to emulate the bip-boopish limited instruments, and yet still put them all to their best use in a series of amazing tracks that just get better upon their repeat listening. The boss tracks in particular are the kind of songs that get the heart racing as you test your skills against the biggest, baddest targets in the game. I just adore every single track that accompanies them. And gameplay-wise, it's Roguelite, because this is me we're talking about and I derive nourishment from losing at video games. But anyway, the game starts off with a little tutorial level to get you introduced to the characters and core mechanics, and then you're plunked into the hub area from which the rest of the game experience extends outward. You choose if you're playing as Nina, who uses her arm-mounted buster to attack from afar, or Ace, who specializes in melee-ranged weapons and techniques. And in this installment, the differences go a step further, as Nina can now mix and match boss powers in order to change how their effects work. For example, combining the wireframe shield and the pink crystal shot makes a rotating barrier of 4 blocks which can absorb incoming projectiles or deal damage to enemies who venture too close. That one's a particular favorite of mine. And Ace gets different techniques, executed by a series of preset button inputs, and you can slide those around until you have them in a place that feels most natural to you. And this game, much like its predecessor, has a co-op mode, both for local and online play alike. So you can ready up as either hero, I prefer Nina because, well, old habits die hard, and you then get to pick from two modes. The first is the traditional roguelike standby of try until you die and then try again. The other, a new mode that 30XX introduces, is a more forgiving mode, where you can save your progress mid-runs, select bosses in traditional Mega Man style, and go until you win. Generally, I stick to the traditional mode because I'm either going to do great or wipe out in the first few levels, with very little in between. It's also here where you can explore the hub. If that makes you happy, there's not a great deal to find just yet, or set up your co-op settings. Then the run begins. Under normal circumstances, the order you tackle these in will be randomized through each playthrough. Right now, as of this writing, there are 6 levels. And if this changes between now and release, I'll have to have a note on the screen at this point telling you what it is. You then must conquer each, all the while collecting various power-ups, which come in 3 major families. The first being the passive power-ups, things like health or damage boosters, which are displayed on your pause screen on the bottom right side. Opposite them, in the bottom left, is a series of armor mods you can choose to equip or remove at any time from said pause screen. See, you only have a limited pool of resources with which to activate these, and the power-ups that expand that limited pool are rare. So while it's normal to just take whatever it is you can get, later in your run you might find yourself swapping between upgrades as necessary, or picking the set that you feel is best for your playstyle. I have yet to complete a run where I've ever collected the entire armor set from any given particular series, so I don't know if they have any cosmetic or set bonus effects, but I can confirm that individual pieces from each do not. Each set of armors is thematic and broken up into helmet, body, arms, and leg upgrades, obviously. This also leads to amusing things like having multiple helmet or leg armors equipped simultaneously, giving me the rather entertaining mental image of the heroes coping with these things being layered. That aside, you also get powers and techniques. These are won by beating each area boss and then picking them up in the shutter area which occurs between zones. And this is where that power and technique customization I mentioned earlier comes into play, as you can then set them however you'd like for your button layout. This also leads to things becoming insane, including an early run, for example, where I was playing as Nina. There I got pretty much nothing but modifiers for my buster, eventually getting to the point where even a single button press caused me to fire in a massive 360-degree ring around myself with shotgun-like spread fire. Double that with all the collection of basic damage ups that I was getting, causing her to turn into a force of nature and reduce bosses to scrap metal in no time at all. Speaking of, there are weapons that have superiority to some bosses, but generally speaking, I don't sweat that too much. Call me stubborn, but there's nothing quite as satisfying as blowing a boss away with just your buster or one of Ace's melee weapons. As I said on my Twitter feed, the hammer is love, the hammer is life, the hammer is justice. And that doesn't even scratch the surface of what some of the upgrades can also be, like the trade-off that comes with prototype augments, which I have only just unlocked in my game. That aside, the game goes on a step further to adding challenges and replayability. See, mid-bosses and boss encounters drop different types of special currencies, which can be used to purchase permanent upgrades that will stick with you in all future runs, thus easing the difficulty up a bit. But there's also some sliders you can adjust, like making spikes deal more damage, or bosses and enemies having more health, and so on, all of which adds to a greater amount of said upgrade currencies every time you collect them. Thus, the more you push yourself, the greater the rewards, and the more stuff you have to adapt and work around. And as a result, the more you develop your skills at the game to tackle ever-increasing challenges. Though, I'll be honest, I've never managed a successful run against the speedrun clock modifier, not a fan of that one. But that's the beauty of the gameplay, you can tailor it to your experience. And for a game that's this amazingly good, and allows me to live my dream of a co-op-enabled Mega Man X title, 30XX is amazing and you need to pick it up for yourselves right now. Now, this is normally the bit where I'd do a breakdown about what I didn't like, but I feel that'd be somewhat unfair. The game is in early access, and it's run by a team who sees through on their promises, so I have no particular doubts or concern at this point that the game is just going to improve from here. Now, in terms of a wish list, that might be different, in addition to just more. For starters, the first 2 games had 2 DLC heroes, and I'd like to see them return on top of that. Hawk and Draco were great in the first game, I'd love to see them again. Maybe some new faces too. Maybe a counterpart for Axel? Sorry, kind of a fanboy over here, don't mind me. That aside, how does it stack up? It's everything 20XX strove to be and better than even that. And I loved 20XX. So 30XX is just a better version that's only going to be improved upon and expanded upon as time goes on. I love this game, and if anything I said today sounds like it's even remotely tempting, I pretty much guarantee you will too. And that's the final word on this bit of indie excellence. This has been the Future Snack, bringing to light another bit of underloved indie gaming for your entertainment today. If you liked today's video, tap the like button so I know. Leave a comment down below telling me about some of your runs. I'd love to compare notes. And for more like this each week, including indie games, obscure games, and even the new home of the Tomodachi Bros Review podcast, you can hit the subscribe and bell icon so you'll never miss a one. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can even become a patron at my Subscribe star, or drop me a greeting on Twitter, handle @hipstersnack. But join me here each and every week for more, and I will see you there.